Okay, so what on earth is going on with the global markets? Overnight, everything was thrown into chaos, and it all comes back to one thing: oil. We're going to dive right in and unpack what's happening, why it's happening, and most importantly, what it all means for you. Yeah, this is the big question on everyone's mind this morning, right? What happened? Well, over the weekend, a conflict that was kind of simmering just exploded, and it sent this massive wave of panic all the way from Asia to Europe and, of course, to the US. Let's just look at the raw numbers, because they really tell the story here. $119.50. At one point on Monday morning, that was the price for a single barrel of Brent crude oil. I mean, to put that into perspective for you, prices literally jumped by more than 25%, almost overnight. That is a massive, massive shock to the system. And you know that shockwave? It hit the markets immediately. We're talking a 5.2% drop in Japan's Nikkei 225 index. And get this, South Korea's Kospi, it fell even harder, by a full 6%. They actually had to halt trading for 20 minutes just to try and stop the panic selling. Wild. And look, this wasn't just about the stock market. Nope. This number, plus 25%, that's the one-day surge in UK gas prices for month-ahead delivery. That's a direct, painful hit on energy costs, and it all happened in the blink of an eye. So yeah, these numbers, they're the alarm bells ringing loud and clear. Just last week, the market was, relatively relaxed, and then suddenly it wakes up to an absolute nightmare scenario. The panic was fast, and it was severe. The key phrase to focus on here is prolonged conflict. It's the fear of that. The escalations we saw over the weekend, the scenes of energy infrastructure being destroyed, that's what convinced investors that this isn't going to be over quickly. And that uncertainty is pure poison for the markets. Okay, so let's get to the why. How did we even get here? To really understand why the markets are freaking out, we have to look at the specific chain of events that kicked this whole thing off. So this whole crisis really escalated in a clear tit-for-tat sequence. It started with US and Israeli airstrikes hitting Iranian oil depots. Then Iran responded by targeting energy infrastructure in neighboring Gulf states. We saw Saudi Arabia intercepting waves of drones. And then, to top it all off, Iran basically signaled it's not backing down by naming a new hardline supreme leader. And all this action is centered on one absolutely critical location: the Strait of Hormuz. You're going to hear this name a lot. It's this narrow shipping lane that has suddenly become the focal point of all this global anxiety. So why is this one little stretch of water so incredibly important? Well, get this. About a fifth, 20% of the entire world's oil supply normally passes right through this single choke point. But now, since the conflict flared up, traffic has pretty much ground to a halt. So you can see how it works, right? A disruption in one narrow passage of water, and suddenly there are these massive shockwaves hitting the entire global economy. Let's follow that ripple effect and see where it goes. And this contagion, it spread in real time. It wasn't just contained to Asia. When European markets opened, they were already deep in the red. We're talking Germany's DAX, France's CAC 40, the UK's FTSE 100. All of them took significant hits. It was just a sea of red right across the board. Okay, so with markets in a total tailspin like this, the immediate question for world leaders is pretty obvious. What can we do to stop the bleeding? How do we calm this down? Well, it looks like a three-step emergency plan is already kicking into gear. First, the G7 finance ministers are holding an emergency meeting. The big idea on the table? A coordinated release of strategic petroleum reserves, which would be managed by the International Energy Agency. Now, this is the same playbook they used after Russia's invasion of Ukraine back in 2022. It's meant to be this powerful signal to calm the markets, but honestly, its real impact all depends on how long this supply disruption actually lasts. And this quote here from Paul Budden over at 91 Asset Management, it just perfectly captures the mood right now. It really all comes down to uncertainty. Nobody has any idea how long this is going to last, and that's exactly what's making the market so nervous. He even threw out the possibility that prices could temporarily hit a range of $120 to $150 a barrel. Wow. Now, for a completely different take on this, former US President Donald Trump posted this on his Truth Social platform. He pretty much dismisses any concerns about rising oil prices and instead frames them as a very small price to pay for safety and peace. It's just a really clear example of the huge spectrum of political reaction we're seeing to all this economic fallout. Okay, So we've talked about geopolitics and big market numbers. But the crucial point is, how does all of this stuff actually translate into your daily life? Let's connect those dots. Well, the most immediate, in-your-face impact is right here, at the gas pump. In the US, average gasoline prices shot up 11% in just the last week. And over in the UK, wholesale gas prices have doubled since the conflict began. This is a direct hit to your wallet, plain and simple. And the threat goes way beyond just fuel. See, higher energy costs mean higher inflation, because it costs more to make and transport, well, everything. And that could force central banks to keep interest rates high to fight that inflation, which means more expensive mortgages and loans for you and me. It even makes it more costly for governments themselves to borrow money. It's a whole chain reaction. Which, of course, leaves us with one final, pretty unsettling question. With global tensions this high, and with this conflict continuing with no clear end in sight, are the tumbling markets and soaring energy prices we've seen in the last 24 hours just the beginning? Is this just the first shockwave? That's the question the entire world is now holding its breath to see answered.